Hey folks, I'm best-selling author of The Power Zero, David McKnight. In today's video, you'll see part one of my conversation with financial advisor Scott Nelson, in which we discuss the $239 trillion hole in our nation's economy and what that means for your retirement plan. I updated and revised Power Zero in 2018 when it got picked up by Penguin Random House. And the chapter that they asked me to put in was on the Trump tax cuts, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. Because what they did was they weren't able to get Congress to pass it under a 2/3 majority. They got it under a simple majority, so they did it under what's called budget reconciliation. That means that those tax cuts had an expiration date. That means that they would expire in 8 years. So we know that come January 1st, 2026, tax rates are going to revert back to what they were in 2017. Okay, so the current version of the Power Zero reflects this 8-year period of tax cuts. And you've rightly pointed out that we've got 2 years left. So I am planning on doing an updated and revised version in 2025 that reflects what's going to happen in 2026. And what is going to happen in 2026? Well, we know that tax rates will, like I said, tax rates will go back to what they were in 2017, but that's not the real news in my mind. The real news is what I think is going to happen to tax rates in 2030 and beyond. Remember, when tax rates revert back to what they were in 2017, we're really just talking about minor changes on the margins. The 22 becomes the 25, the 24 becomes the 28, the 37 becomes the 39.6. You know, these aren't life-altering increases in tax rates. I don't think anybody was going around in 2017 under those tax rates and saying, hey, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. What we've always been warning against is not that small increase on the margin. What we've been warning about echoes a lot of what former Comptroller General of the federal government, David Walker, has been saying, is that he predicted back in 2010 that tax rates would have to double or we go broke as a country. In fact, he wrote a best-selling book called Comeback America, in which basically he said that because of unfunded obligations for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, which is Larry Kotlikoff is a famous professor out of Boston University. He says the underfunding is about $239 trillion, meaning we would have to have $239 trillion sitting in a bank account today earning treasury rates to be able to deliver on all the entitlement programs that we promised that we can't afford to pay. So we've got this massive hole in our entitlement spending, massive hole, if you will, in the budget over the next 75 years. And David Walker has said that if we don't double tax rates by 2030, then tax rates will have to go even higher for every year that we postpone doubling those tax rates. So this is a problem. Tax rates have to go up. And then there's a recent Penn Wharton study that came out that basically said, look, you don't have to double taxes in 2030. It will get worse after 2030 if you don't double taxes. But there comes a point in time beyond which, if you procrastinate, beyond which no amount of raising taxes or cutting spending will arrest the collapse of our financial system as we know it. Okay, so we can do lots of cutting of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid between now and 2043. We can do lots of raising of taxes between now and 2043. The sooner we put the fixes in place, the better. But if come 2043, we've kicked the can down the road and nothing has changed, then we will sort of go into this death spiral as a country, and there'll be no stopping at that point. So we're a little bit in the crunch zone, as it were, in terms of having to put fixes in place beyond simply raising taxes ever so slightly on the margins in 2026. We're talking major increases in revenue, massive decreases in what we've promised to pay for the Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid entitlement programs, or some combination too. So we're getting into the crunch zone. And so I tell people, yes, there is opportunity between now and 2026 to take advantage of low tax rates, but really it's between now and 2030 when we believe tax rates will have to skyrocket to fix the trajectory of our country.
Well, just depressing all over the place, isn't it? We have a lot of people that start getting really concerned, and Social Security is just going to go bankrupt and be toast. What do you tell people on that note? Because, you got baby boomers that are planning on that. That's just been part of what they've assumed for their retirement.
Yeah, I don't think baby boomers have to worry about Social Security. I think Social Security is going to be there for the baby boomers. If we don't do anything between now and say 2032, they're projecting that there's going to be a 22% cut in their Social Security. So something's going to happen. They're not going to lose their Social Security altogether, but there may be, if Congress doesn't put some things in place between now and 2032, there could be some reductions. I don't believe that any politician out there wants the single largest voting bloc in the nation, which is the baby boomers, 25% of all voters. I don't think any politician wants to take those people off. And there's no better way to take those people off than to tell them, because of inaction on our part, you're going to get a 22% reduction in your Social Security. I don't think anybody wants to do that. They'd rather borrow money to plug the hole in Social Security before have that happen. But here's what's going to happen with Social Security. I think it's a relatively easy fix. I think for people like me and Generation X and younger, I think if you say, look, lifespans are longer, people are living longer, people are working longer, you no longer need to retire at 62 or 65, you're probably going to retire at 70, what have you, because you're living longer. Nobody wants to spend 30 years in retirement. Maybe they only want to spend 20 years in retirement. So I think what they're going to do is they're going to push back Social Security to 70. I think that's going to there's going to be a general understanding that the new retirement age is 70, not 65. But I don't think that's going to be for baby boomers. I think it's going to be for the rest of us. And so what that does is it dramatically decreases the amount of money that you need to sustain Americans over the course of retirement. So that's an easy fix. Scott, the hard thing is not Social Security. The hard thing is Medicare. Because Medicare, we will spend 5 times more money on Medicare over the next 75 years than we will on Social Security alone. And there's no real easy way to fix Medicare. You can't really. People are relying on, age 65, getting Medicare. It increases, the rate of inflation on Medicare is a lot higher than it is on Social Security. We're required to index Medicare to keep up with inflation each and every year. You can't print your way out of the problem, because as you print more money, that, it devalues the dollar and increases the cost of Social Security and Medicare commensurately. So you can't really print your way out of the problem. But Medicare is a real big problem. And I think Medicare is the one thing that could bankrupt our country if we don't get serious about figuring out a way to make it more sustainable.
Well, they've been working on that for a while. We happen to do Medicare in our practice, and we saw 16 years ago or so the Medicare Advantage plans be introduced. The government is paying private insurance companies much less than they figure it's costing them to administer that internally. And things are being tweaked, but it's still something that has to be paid. I mean, what they're paying to the insurance companies is a fraction of the Part B premiums. So, yeah, something's going to have to give there for sure.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the next 10 years is going to be very, very interesting, because politicians are not anxious to fix these things, because this is the third rail of politics. It's precisely the thing that can get you voted out of office. So they're kicking the can down the road. Their number one job is to get reelected. If you're a congressman, you got to do that every 2 years. So you're not going to do anything. Problem that has a deadline at 2043, a hard deadline at 2043. People aren't talking about fixing a problem that comes to a head in 2043. They're talking about, how do I get elected 2 years from now? How do I get elected 4 years from now if you're a president? How do you get elected 6 years from now if you're a senator? So that's unfortunately, and Nassim Taleb, who is the author of Black Swan and I believe also Irrational Exuberance, he says, look, it's just a frailty of our political system that people can get elected by voting, by conceding benefits to their constituencies. And once a benefit comes into existence, it's like Ronald Reagan says, the government program is the very definition of eternal life, because once it comes into existence, it never, ever goes away. And so it's very, very difficult I remember Paul Ryan, who's very conservative. He talked about cutting programs he was running for election back in Wisconsin. This was years ago. And just the very mention of cutting Social Security or in some way making it more solvent and more sustainable over time. I mean, they were filming attack ads showing him pushing an old lady in a wheelchair over a cliff, saying, "This is what Paul Ryan wants to do to you." So there aren't that many politicians that are very enthusiastic about fixing Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. So it's very, very easy to kick the can down the road, but that's precisely what's gotten us into so much trouble. And there, like I said, there comes a point in time where you simply can't kick the can down the road anymore.
Okay, folks, that was part one of my interview with financial advisor Scott Nelson. In the next 10 years, I'm looking to put 100,000 Americans on the road to the 0% tax bracket. If you would like some help implementing a balanced, comprehensive approach to tax-free retirement that shields you from the impact of higher taxes down the road, head on over to DaveMcknight.com and click on the Connect with an Advisor button. I'm happy to refer you to an advisor in the Power Zero network that has been trained, vetted, and qualified personally by me. If you're a financial professional and want to learn how to become a certified Power Zero advisor, head over to PowerZero.com and opt into my free video series. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them into the comment section below. I'll respond to every single one of them personally. And don't forget to click like, subscribe, and the bell so you never miss a video. This is David McKnight. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.